Hello and welcome back to Off Track Podcast. Now, the subject of motorcycle racing commentary is as divisive a topic as you'll ever find amongst the fans of motorcycle racing. But one thing I'm pretty sure they all agree on is that my guest this week is one of the most iconic and well-loved voices from World Superbike and MotoGP. Having formed fantastic partnerships with Huewen and with Toby Moody, he stepped back from the sport a few years ago, so we thought it was high time we went down to the wilds of Cheshire and caught up with this great fella to find out what he's been doing in the interim and take a look back at his career. While you're here, please make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button. Every subscription and like helps us grow and helps us bring brilliant guests like our guest this week. That's enough from me, because without further ado, this is the man you've come to hear from. So ladies and gentlemen, the fantastic Julian Ryder. Enjoy.
Julian Ryder, welcome to Off Track. Thanks for inviting us down to beautiful Macclesfield. It's lovely to see you.
Sunny Cheshire.
Sunny Cheshire it is.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to see you. How have you been?
Fine. Busier than you should be in retirement.
We see you on social media. You've been at Sandown and Stoke and Newark and Stafford and all the places at the toy fairs, and you're keeping incredibly busy.
I like... It's another thing I like doing. I mean, I couldn't do nothing. And the trading in old toys and memorabilia and, you know, some of it kicking around in this room. Things I like pass through my hands. Some stick, some don't.
What's been the best piece that you've had in recent weeks that's really tickled your fancy?
Well, I had, we're talking not long after the Stafford Classic Bike show.
Sure.
So there's a couple of things went there. I had it looked like a very strange modernist plastic cube.
Okay.
That was exploding from the inside. So you got clear, then a jagged bit of cream, and then black. And it was the winner's trophy for the 1964 Japanese 50cc Grand Prix won by Ralph Bryans.
Good grief.
And it was, you know, as a trophy, it's about the most modernist bit of artwork you could ever
That's
see.
Incredible.
And that went to a collector, an Ulster, fittingly enough. And I had a little 1950s lads dressing up outfit, Speed Devil. I had the box lid.
That.
It was pre or post war. Only had the box lid up, but the artwork was wonderful. And the outfit, sort of little peaked hat, overalls, tailored like it was done by Savile Row.
Beautiful.
It was incredible.
How beautiful.
And that went to Italy.
Oh, wow.
To a collector who always, you know, one of those regulars who turns up and has a look, moans about the price. You look at his Gucci shoes, which cost more than my car, and you eventually come to a deal. But I know he has a personal collection.
Sure.
And he was off looking for a mannequin to put it on.
Yeah. I said that it's a great way to keep you busy, isn't it? And it's motorcycle racing moves on. Everything moves on in time.
Oh, God, yeah.
And to keep you busy in your retirement is fundamental to keep the old grey matter working as well.
It's that, yeah. It's something... Hopefully it makes a couple of bob occasionally, but that's...
Ideally.
But, you know, let's be honest, that's not always the case. If you're an enthusiast, which is what I am, you're too prone to buy things because you like them. Not because you go, there's some profit in that, you know. Doesn't always happen.
Oh, look, shiny. Or not, is in most cases.
Well, if we, look in there, that plate.
Yes.
19...
You're okay?
Yeah, Swiss Grand Prix, 1930s. Probably what you got for turning up, rather than a podium trophy. One of those presentation pieces when you signed on. And I spent, I think what I bid at the auction was fair enough, but then the auction house loaded on about 35% bloody, premium and postage. And you went on thinking, that hurt a bit more than I...
It is real life eBay, isn't it? But tangible eBay.
Yeah. It's, but, I've learned mainly because I walked past things I shouldn't have walked past, that I'm not going to see another one of them next week.
No, it's absolutely not.
So just keep putting your bloody hand up and buy it and worry about what you're going to do about it at a later date.
It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved us all.
And you never regret the things you buy. You always regret the things you didn't buy.
Of course. Of course. Take me back to the early days of Julian Ryder in the motorcycling world before commentary. Where did it all start?
Well, I was, career-wise, I'm really a journalist. I always say what I am, and I was a monthly magazine journalist. I was never a news guy.
No.
I had the luxury of writing, 2,000-word interviews or whatever.
And features and proper magazine articles.
Proper magazine stuff.
Yeah.
Although on magazines, you had to do everything from writing the contents page and captions and proofreading. There was only about 3 of you, even on a top-selling magazine like Bike when I was on it. So I started in the trade and technical press because I had a science degree, albeit a rubbish one. And I was taught to sub-edit at a Learned Society's publishing department, Institute of Electrical Engineers. And the house style somewhere like that when you're dealing with cutting-edge academic papers.
Sure.
And trust me, you did not want to bollocks up Professor Sir Eric Laithwaite's latest paper on linear electric motors. Otherwise, your head was going to end up somewhere in the next county. But to get that sort of thing readable and understandable worldwide to members of the institution, you had to get, obviously, your basic sub-editing to a very strict house style, lay out the mathematics, etc., to an extremely strict house style, and have 3-hour arguments about whether that was 1 word, 2 words, or hyphenated.
Which say then, I guess, on the road, because you've always had a passion for motorcycles, haven't you?
Yes, I was always a motorcyclist.
That's the first and foremost.
Yeah, I was caused by Dave Bickers and Grandstand Scrambles in the 60s, I suppose it would have been, and making my mother take me to Tweedledown for my birthday treat to see Dave Bickers. Well, I was a Dave Bickers fan.
Incredible. Those are the days that started a lot of people into the industry, aren't they? And it was a different world at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Motorcycling in general, but it's scrambling, whether it be road racing. It was a completely different time.
Oh, yes. Compared to what we're doing now, utterly a different sport, almost.
Indeed. No, I would agree.
I think there's so little comparison to be drawn, apart from the fast guys then would have been the fast guys now, and vice versa.
The cream always rises to the top, doesn't it?
Fast is fast. That's it.
And that doesn't change. And it is. And as the old saying goes, as long as there are two motorcycles on the planet,
there'll be
always be racing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So when you took the moving on from the regular pieces that you were doing in the chemistry and the engineering world, the opportunity then came to write for a motorcycle. You sort of engineered a place for.
Well, I was applying for jobs on motorcycle magazines whenever they came up, and I was, where was I in 1980? Working for the Design Council's magazine, Engineering. Rather a nice, big, glossy, prestigious, with some, and you got to deal with some interesting stuff. And Mercury House in Waterloo started they did some car magazines and trade and technical. They were one of those old-fashioned publishing houses, now nearly extinct.
Of course.
That did trade and technical on one floor and consumer on the other. And they started a magazine called The Biker that only lasted about 18 months. But the features editor was Peter Watson, ex of Bike magazine. And I fluked a job. They couldn't find anybody else. And I got to watch and learn from Peter Watson, who, as a writer, I had utterly admired for years. And I was, when I was a student and what have you, Bike magazine, I was one of those ones queuing up outside the newsagents and say, it's, come on, open, it should be in today. And I was utterly, adored it. And after The Biker, before it closed down and I missed the redundancy money by about 3 months, but because I left to join Bike, which was the peak of my ambition in life.
So tell me about your time at Bike.
Editor was Dave Calderwood. who was young, that was when EMAP, in all subject matters, had a wonderful track record of saying, you're a bright young person, here's a magazine, here's a budget. And if you succeeded, they just left you alone. In evidence, I'll give you, say, David Hepworth and Smash Hits.
Of course.
Would be
perfect example.
Probably the prime example.
Yeah.
They were in the next office.
Ah, okay.
In Soho.
Good grief.
Neil Tennant from the Pet Shop Boys was one of the features writers on Smash Hits in those days.
And that's how we learnt lyrics back in those days.
Yes, you brought him on. That's what Come On Eileen's about.
Showing our age now.
Yeah. And we were, I look back and think of some of the stuff we got away with was, you wouldn't stand a chance now.
Like what, Jules?
Well, I suppose the first day I joined with Roland Brown on the same day.
Yes.
Who's still an active writer, as you know. And I think we did a photo shoot in January of 400cc Japanese customs. Right, open face helmets, cowboy boots. There was snow on the side of the road. So one, frostbite was there. And two, we were riding about that far from the back of a pickup containing a Scottish photographer. Oh. And I remember I got back to the office and I said to Roland, if anybody asks you to do something that dangerous again, just say no. I also have not fond memories of a GPZ11, the first one, the twin shock,
yes,
on the banking at Myra.
No.
And I did that. I can assure you, really quite quickly. I was not in my job description. Also fond memories of talking to a policeman while driving a 350LC with a Sidewinder 250LC with a Sidewinder sidecar to Bob, the L-plate, and we had a stuffed Airedale on it for some reason.
Okay.
It just seemed like a good idea at the time. And, it's just idiocy, left, right and centre. But we sold, I think the great thing was that, I don't know whether this was Dave's thing or one of mine, I was the features editor, that we had an imaginary person who was the reader. He was in his mid-20s. He had a GS 550 Suzuki that was about 4 years old. He was going to the Boldor next year, he would, given a infinite budget, he would buy 3 Ducatis, a Moto Martin. And we had an idea what our reader was and what he aspired to and dreamed of. And we were good as well at publishing travelogues.
Yes,
which was one of the better things we did. That first issue I did. Some guy, the first story I ever read about going to India and riding a Royal Enfield Bullet around the Punjab.
Oh, fabulous!
And it was probably be difficult to take a bad photograph, but he brought back some very decent photographs.
Yeah, you'd imagine it's one of the better places to photograph in its reasonably natural environment.
My dad, who spent a lot of time in India during the war, and liked India, read it, and he wasn't a motorcyclist. He was very suspicious about me leaving the design council again. And I remember he was sort of flicking the magazine at me across the kitchen table, and I went home and said, "Lad who wrote that understands India."
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, that's all right.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dad.
Cheers. Appreciate that. Doff my cap in your general direction.
He was never impressed. He was an academist, a metallurgist, taught at Manchester, did a visiting year at Cambridge as a visiting fellow. And I think the only time he was ever impressed, one of his research students found out it was obviously a motorcyclist. "Oh, well, you're Julian Ryder's dad. He's really good." I was impressed. Every time my dad got a vague inclination that...
Is there something that spurs you on when your dad is at such a high level, an academic, that you not looking for... what's the word?
Validation is the word.
That's exactly the word I'm looking for.
It's a good question. My parents never really pushed all 3 kids. But I'm the only one of the three that didn't go to Cambridge, so,
I've been down the A14 a couple of times.
Yes,
that's as close as I've got.
That's about it. And my brother is currently political secretary to the General Secretary of the United Nations. So call that the second most important diplomat in the world, shall we?
We shall, yes. Pretty much, yes.
So there's my sister has 2 kids in Edinburgh and has really been a family person, but runs a little nursery, and went to Cambridge. So she's bright with it as well. So I was sort of I'm the oldest, so I was the one who went and did what the hell I wanted. And the only time my old man really got annoyed with me, I never failed an exam.
Okay.
But I always passed them like that.
Yes.
There was never an A. Whereas my brother would be slashing his wrists if he hadn't got straight A stars,
Pass is a pass.
That's what I said.
Pass is a pass. It's on my CV.
Yeah,
it's fine.
That's it. It's there. Look, piece of paper. I passed.
And with the best will in the world, I'm quite happy to be sat here with you.
I'm not going to say I regret anything.
No.
I would have liked to have been better as a scientist, academically, because I've got massive respect. Of
course.
Engineers and research scientists. I was listening to Desert Island Discs in the car at the weekend, and the lady from Hitchin who was on it was boss of science at NASA.
Wow.
Now,
okay.
There's a job.
They're making a difference, aren't they?
There is, she thought, well, yes, when we thought about sending this to the sun, you go, bloody hell, And you just learn, talk about pushing the frontiers and
it's true.
Learning new, understanding of where we are. Oh, that means that. Bloody hell,
That's beyond Brian Cox and more, isn't it?
It's Brian Cox and more, yeah.
And more.
With popular science like Brian Cox,
yes.
I've got the utmost admiration for. And something I have, in my writing anyway, tried to do, and hope I did well, was explaining maybe sometimes complicated engineering in understandable
terms.
terms.
Very well through the commentary was that you could make relatively complex motorcycle engineering relatively easy to understand.
Well, this is sort of the Jerry Burgess attack, which is just chop it down to the bit that matters. Never mind Jerry Burgess at the Saxon Ring. Right, the only place that matters here is the bike working under brakes at the bottom of the hill, because that's the only place you can damn well overtake round here. The riders can sort the rest of the circuit out. There is that focusing in on this matters. And when you discuss it, I did with the help of Dr. Martin Rains, something I was quite pleased about Yamaha's phased crankshaft for the R1, which is a difficult thing to explain.
Indeed.
But you can do it if you rewrite it about 3 times, and it's just about, you've got to point out the thing. This only matters at extremes of revs. This does not affect every day. This affects a Grand Prix engine right up there at 17,000 RPM or something. And then this effect is very noticeable. And what I was able to sum it up as, we've always heard riders talking about connection. So what you do here happens at the back wheel.
Indeed.
And that's what Furusawa's research did. It quantified connection.
That one word that Freddie Spencer uses regularly.
Exactly.
Feel.
That, with this arrangement of crankshaft and the mathematics that, then you're much nearer a direct connection. Whereas with an ordinary layout of crankshaft,
yes,
it's all over them. You look at the graphs, bloody hell, this is just, there's spikes everywhere, and the map of what's going on
absolutely
is gibberish, So you can explain it, that way. And Furusawa used a very good analogy, which is signal to noise ratio.
Okay.
Tuning your radio in the old days.
Yes, the FM and the medium wave.
Yeah, there's interference. Oh, there's the signal I'm looking for.
Waggle the area a little bit. There we are.
Yeah, and you get much better signal to noise ratio at high revs with that layout than you do with a conventional layout. And I thought that was a really good analogy. And that's what you look for to explain really quite difficult stuff.
And it's beyond me. I'm not mechanically minded. I make no apologies for it. That's why I sit and do this. I'm not mechanically minded at all. So to learn that side and work as part of a team and be within the paddock, and you get to pick things up, spring rates and wow, there's so much going on.
Suspension is another one. The spring doesn't matter. All the spring does is hold the motorbike up. What you are worrying about is a bump in the road throws the wheel, the axle, the brake at the motorbike. Now, the spring absorbs that energy. So you've got a spring compressed, full of energy. What happens when you let a spring go like that? Doing, 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 doing.
Absolutely.
So how do you control that? This is the definition of damping. You are damping out an oscillation. Right, we'll have a piston there, then you've got to force oil through a hole in it. That'll slow it down. Yeah. Well, it's a bit, we need to fine tune it. So you put a stack of flexible washers over the hole that add to the resistance. That's it. That is, you've got to use the word damping because it's the only word that describes it.
It's absolutely
You are
right.
damping down the oscillation of a spring that's got too much energy in it until it gets back to rest.
But then we look at preload and compression.
Now, preload is something I've never quite been able to, but the basics of suspension. What the Olins and other engineers are doing is stacking loads of washers on top of a piston with holes in it to regulate oil flow through that orifice to slow down the movement of a spring.
Do you remember what I said 5 minutes ago about how simple it is?
Yeah. That's it.
Prime example.
That's it. You don't forget the spring, forget rate, doing, you want lesser, you want less of that.
Do you want more doing or less doing?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
it.
the bottom way, isn't
That's it. That's all you need to know to have a fundamental grasp of what the engineering is about.
It's fascinating. I had every idea that this chat was going to be fascinating, Jules, but there's going to be more of this to come, I am sure.
Well, there's, and front end and back end, and then you've got to, it gets, as soon as you put it on a real life situation, things get a lot more complicated, of course. And engineering is compromise always. So you're going to always be trading off, back to Jerry Burgess. As long as it works at the bottom of the hill, I don't care what it does round the left-handers,
Well, you have the option to make it as difficult or as easy as you want.
Yeah. And again, the legend is that when Jerry Burgess first saw the Yamaha, when he and Rossi joined, he went, well, that up, it'll only confuse the rider, just...
Keep it simple.
Yeah. He was very much of that
We'll come on to that period shortly, because we spoke before we started the cameras rolling that your career in co-commentary has taken a fantastic path, and not by design, but by right place, right time.
You can't plan any of this.
Not at all.
You can't plan. Yeah, you can't plan that this new satellite TV company who had Grand Prix and Sonny the Beebs got it to whoever, so they can't charge you for it, can they? It's free.
That's right.
On terrestrial. Oh, what's this superbike, It looks all right, we'll have that then. And suddenly you get the first year of Fogarty versus Russell, of the Phoenix that is Ducati against the might of Japan. Thank you, God. That was... Don't forget, in 1988, when all that started, Ducati was a bankrupt company in protective government receivership. It was dead. They built 200 888s and prayed. Won the World Championship. Yeah. And, Ducati, more than any other factory, probably since Norton, lives or dies by its racing success. If Ducati wins races, it will sell motorbikes. If they're running around at the back, they won't.
When you look back at those days, we're skipping a little bit, but because the endurance side of things, which is where it begins. In fact, let's go to that bit first. Am I right to say your first love was endurance racing?
My first love was probably motocross because
of course.
But in terms of professional, when I was actually earning a living,
yes,
from motorbikes, then probably, yes, because certainly my first trip to the Bol d'Or in 1980 and seeing TZ 700 with lights on, fighting factory Hondas, factory Kawasaki's, factory Suzuki's, and God knows what else running around in, was in front of 100,000 crazy motards, was a bit of, this is how it should be done, It was a festival. It was like Daytona used to be, like the Isle of Man, whatever. And I think the Isle of Man with the classics understands this, that the future is being a festival, not just a race meeting.
100%.
That's, the Bol, it was wonderful. And, half the Grand Prix grid was set, the TZs had Christian Saron, Boot van Dulman, Uber Gal, couple of factory testers, Sadio Asami. It was bloody hell. Greg Hansford was on a factory Kawasaki.
Incredible.
This was, my God, this is,
But a great way to get to know them as well, and to be, as a journalist, writing on that, and to bring yourself into the road racing circles.
Yes.
The short circuit, the endurance, wherever.
Yes.
It was an extra feather to your bow as well.
Yes, it was lovely. I could go and do a feature on somebody, a team, the event, the run, just a road test, take one of the test bikes. And that's the feature about, what did I last, CBXC or something I went on, I think, one year that was, that will make a road test. I went on a 1200 Aspincade Gold Wing as well, took my then wife on it. And probably the best motorcycle I've ever ridden in terms of meeting the design brief. No, not a bungee cord in sight for 2 weeks away, unheard of.
Everything fits where it should do.
Yeah.
How wonderful. But to be a part of that, and at that time was, that's almost, as it turns out, the golden age of magazine and feature writing.
Absolutely, of magazine publishing.
Again, from magazine and publishing and people. They say, having that idea of who your reader is, in the same way that we try and do that with the podcast, my listener it's me.
Yes, that's it.
I'm that 45 to 65 age group that consumes the people that we enjoy talking to.
Absolutely. I mean, back in, I think the highest sale we had when I was on bikes was 82 to 85. I don't think we ever quite got an ABC of 100,000, but we were, 90, high 90s.
Which is incredible.
Which you show that figure to a magazine publisher today and they'll fall over and cut their wrists.
Well, you look at the time what people were riding back then, and how available people were, you didn't go out and buy a Fiesta, you bought an AR50.
Yes.
And a Fizzy, and you moved on to an RD125, an RGV250.
Yeah, there was almost
early 90s.
Yeah, there was a career ladder almost.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And it was Star Rider 4 times round the block. Yeah, you can do that. That's it. Off you go. None of this 4-tier
I know.
government thing.
Accessibility was
incredible.
Yeah.
Yes, people got hurt. Yes, but
yes, it was a bit more Wild West than it is now, and there's a debate to be had there about
in terms of motorcycle safety and in terms of, but it was of its time. That's the important thing.
Indeed.
It's a bit like yourself when you talk about the magazine features and Gus Scott in later years.
Yes, yeah.
And Ronnie and the rest of them.
Yes, the people who carried on in that.
In a similar vein.
In a similar vein. Faster than me, but in a similar vein, I think. And it's also the other thing about riding a motorcycle in this country back then, the roads were considerably less crowded. And that really is the one thing that puts me off.
I agree.
Nowadays, just the amount of traffic.
And in a better condition. The roads aren't conducive to motorcycles at the moment.
No, they are. I mean, several of my friends around here who are younger and richer than me, the road bikes are mothballed effectively or sold. Buy last year's Supersport 600 bike and go track days.
And that's where the money is now, isn't it? That's where the people are going.
Well, this is, Cheshire, Wilmslow's up there, Presbury's up there. We're probably, we are talking people with a nice postcode.
There's nothing like driving through Presbury and understanding where you fit into the into the world.
Scheme of things.
Really sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
I'll carry on.
Noddy Holder's house, Wayne Rooney's house.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Sir Alex, everybody.
Yeah.
It's It's a popular part of the world.
If you've got money.
If you have money.
And it always has been, because I was a kid in this town. I did my secondary school time here. And Prestbury was always, where are you from? Prestbury.
The Golden Circle.
Oh, yeah.
The Golden Triangle.
Yeah, Wilmslow, Alderley Edge, Prestbury. Yeah. Man City footballers that side, Man United footballers that side.
I remember, just going slightly off topic, my other half, Jennifer, had a procedure done in Wilmslow some years ago. So while she was having the procedure done, I just went off for a drive around, because I don't come this neck of the woods too often. And I ended up turning around in Michael Carrick's driveway.
Yes, yeah.
Because I'd done my research the day before. There's big houses there. Being a former estate agent, I don't mind a decent, looking at a decent property from afar. And it turns out Michael Carrick's driveway, Wayne Rooney lived next door. I'd come in past Sir Alex and Freddie Flintoff.
Yes.
At Mottram St Andrew.
Yeah.
So, just realised I was completely out of my depth.
No, the goal, you're right.
The other half up and went back.
Whereas Macclesfield is a knackered old mill town, like most of the northwest.
It's in a Burnley sim. It's got mills, isn't it?
Yeah, Macclesfield was Silk.
Indeed.
The football team's the Silk men.
And we came down the Silk Road this morning.
Exactly. Yeah. So, when I was a lad, there was still the 2 weeks in July, Barnaby Festival, when all the mills closed. And my mum being a Londoner, when we first moved up here, I can't even buy a pint of milk. It was, that was mid-60s. And the silk industry was heading down, but it was still there. And this was still a mill town. And therefore, it was rather interesting. It was very much, in many ways, a woman's town, because the work was looms.
Yeah.
And it was, the economic power was women.
It was women for that.
Yeah. Because it's not a big place. You haven't got a steelworks over there and, a car factory there. You've got a bunch of small specialist silk weavers.
The specialist workforce, isn't it? Where else would you take it?
Yeah.
This is a beautiful part of the world, though. I do like it over here.
Yeah.
It is nice. It's just a lovely digression. This is a beauty. I love this. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter where it goes, does it? It really doesn't. That's the best part of it. When did you get your start in commentary, and how?
I'd taken over Road Racer magazine, which was an act of blind faith and idiocy. I'd been editing Motorcycle International for Mark Williams, launch editor, 3 years. Got into an ABC of 44,000 from a standing start, which I was pretty pleased with, seeing we're now talking late 80s.
Indeed.
And I was offered the title Road Racer. Mike Scott had edited it. Stupidly, I just took it with debts and everything and nearly bankrupted myself. But, hey, I told naivety beyond belief, frankly. And the satellite company was starting up with this newfangled, and I got an invite just out of the blue, come to lunch with the station manager. Because obviously I was the only, the PR had gone through motorcycle racing. There was Terry Stelling from Motorcycle News and me.
Okay.
So, there was...
Yep, that's your
that's it. And I forget his name, which is bad of me, because he's an Olympic medalist. He won I think a relay bronze in Tokyo. I can't, but he's an impressive, guy. Are you looking, man? Bloody hell. And after lunch, I was saying, well, thank you very much. This is really interesting, So would you like to come in and see a Grand Prix being broadcast? Of course I bloody would,
absolutely.
So I toddle in, and we're sitting in an editing suite, and it's not a studio, it's an edit suite. Yeah. And there are wires hanging from the ceiling, there are things hanging off this is a building site. And two people are commentating, and they are not motorcycle, they're good broadcasters.
Yes. It's a big difference.
There is a very big difference. And where was it? It was Hockenheim, I think. And I'm passing notes into the show. The person leading the 125s is a woman, Terry Rinney. No, he's not Italian, he's Venezuelan. Ivan Palazzesi or whatever. And, the end, I toddled off and said, would you want to come in next week and see the Yugoslav Grand Prix? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I come in, and the guy who's supposed to be commentating is stuck in France after the Le Mans 24 Hours, something like that. And he was a name you knew from the radio.
Right.
From cricket and whatever.
Sure.
He was, again, a proper broadcaster.
Yes.
And he's stuck. And there's Steve Parrish sat there to do the, Steve always gets in there early. And they gave me the microphone.
You noticed there was no shock on my face at that point.
Yeah. And they just gave me the microphone.
And that's it?
That's it.
Good grief.
Because the producer had no bloody choice.
No. But then you kind of done a blind audition before anyway. At least you knew what you were talking about. They knew that you knew
At least they were aware
talking about.
I knew a bit about the...
Yes.
They didn't know that I could talk.
No, that's useful though, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be able to do as a co-commentator.
Yes, yeah. So
writing and talking are invariably.
Yeah.
I know it sounds really basic, but they are two different skills.
Completely. Because I know some very good journalists who tried to commentate and were rubbish. Yeah, there's some really good writers. And Murray Walker, I did an interview with Murray Walker once. I'd like to drop his name into commentary, if I can. The great man.
Absolutely.
Told me that the worst two co-commentators he ever worked with were Mike Hailwood and Barry Sheen.
Great.
Yeah, again, the fact that somebody was exceptional at what their sport
yes.
doesn't mean they know anything about it.
No, they tend to know the least.
Yeah.
In some cases.
Yes, yeah.
They just want to ride their bikes.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
But then Barry went on to make a career of it with
Barry
Channel 9.
Yeah.
Is it Channel 9?
Yes, in Oz.
In Oz,
More in presentation than in commentary.
Ah, good point. Yes.
Which is, again, a completely
a
different.
big different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, of course, Barry could do television,
But then you end up in the Matt Roberts world where you can and have done both.
Yes.
One of the few of the...
And now Chief Executive Officer of Scunthorpe.
Scunthorpe United.
Yeah.
Up the iron.
Yeah. That's good appointment, by the way.
I think so. He's worked hard over the last 4 years with that master's degree in sports directorate.
And Matt is
He's a football man.
He's a football man. He's an excellent broadcaster and commentator on motorcycle racing. But I think he plays football. He coached kids' teams at home in Huddersfield. I think he is fundamentally a football man.
Season ticket holder at
Huddersfield Town.
Yeah. One of the few that in the world of motorcycle racing that enjoys football.
I think
similar to myself.
Yeah, and me as well. Well, all the Italians do for a start.
Yes. But in the UK, it's kind of frowned on.
Yeah, there's a ridiculous idea that it's jealousy because it's all over the telly.
That's right.
And I used to get this,
and huge houses down the road.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want, I'm not going to pay that money to watch Grand Prix, and it's only going to football, mate. Without football, there wouldn't be a television station. And the first thing I learned when I started working for Sky. And I think I was probably told it by the great Martin Turner, our first producer, who, when he stopped doing the bikes, did rugby and got satellite television's first BAFTA, and latterly has run the Formula One channel for Sky.
Incredible.
So, let's put it this way.
That's a pedigree.
He's not bad at his job. He might be criminally insane at times and an absolute maniac to work for, but he's brilliant. And he said, just remember, we're here to fill in the gaps between football and big-time boxing, because those are the only things that make this place money.
Yes. It's absolutely right. You're talking billions, aren't you, with football?
Yeah.
And boxing with pay-per-view, the money that generates.
Big-time boxing.
Ridiculous.
Still gets ridiculous viewing,
And then you see our little sport of motorcycle racing. We're a niche within a niche almost, aren't we?
Completely. And whatever any channel in this country has done, there seems to be a ceiling of about 1 million. That's it. Yeah. That's it. That's what you're going to get.
But it's not a casual sport, is it? You can't just flick on and understand it straight away because there are so many sub-stories and understanding the nuances.
There is none less coming here. I was asked it so many times by execs in the TV industry. Well, how do we up the audience? And the answer is, in fact, very simple. The answer is a British winner, a hometown hero. See Carl Fogarty, World Superbike, early 90s, when from zero, nobody knew what World Superbike was. Give it the Martin Turner treatment on television. 100,000 people, allegedly, at Brands Hatch, and whopping great viewing figures.
Yeah.
But again, when I was working for Eurosport on Grand Prix, invariably, Motor Grand Prix, or whatever it was at the time, was the top 10 audiences of the year. We blocked out unless Andy Murray got to a semi-final.
Good grief.
And if it was a Grand Slam that he's got to because Eurosport had the Aussie Open.
Indeed.
Then we were blown out of the water.
Right. Okay.
It's the same as the Fogarty effect. It's just a different sport.
We had the Valentino effect, didn't we?
Yes, now we are.
It was a little bit different. To have the World Superbike always worked well because you had the Foggies, you had the JT, you had Neil.
Yeah.
We've had British winners, latterly Jonathan. We've had continuous British success in that series.
The British Championship produces riders who were ready to go there.
No question.
Unlike, say, the Spanish Championship, which is totally designed to produce Grand Prix riders. And Moto3 is the top class.
And they don't set foot on a production bike.
No.
Ever. Never, ever. They get their whole career without touching a bike with a hinge in the middle.
And once they're 16 or whatever, 15, on Grand Prix level circuits.
Yes.
With the safety of a Grand Prix circuit.
Yes, they're not doing Alton Park and Cadwell, are
exactly.
Which opens their eyes somewhat. But those early days of settling into co-commentary, how did you develop the Julian Ryder that we came to know and love on the co-commentary?
Didn't think about it.
Good.
Didn't think. I mean, I always had sheets, usually with the season blocked out in, a square for each with qualifying result, where it put him in the championship, and a running total at the side of, how many wins, how many poles, how many front rows. And so that was that row, 15 races in the season, there's 15 blocks, then the next bloke. So I could just run my eye along and go, well, after the German Grand Prix, he was third in the championship, and now he's down to seventh. That sort of, those numbers were in front of me.
Yes.
But with what is younger, they're in there. In the later years, that you needed them, and you find, I always thought there was just the edge. One of the reasons I packed up, although being tired was the main reason, that you think, oh, hang on, you suddenly you start worrying a bit too much. You don't trust your instincts quite as much, And
I think with the way that the world is now with social media, there's always somebody ready to pick you up on that. You can't just. Whereas in the mid '90s, late '90s, early 2000s, you could get away with it because it was you're just human.
You shouldn't. Getting something wrong, you expect to be picked up. You got it wrong. What do you expect? But also it's live, and there is. I was taught again by Martin Turner. Don't go back and apologise because you had a comma in the wrong place. Just keep going. They've forgotten that. What's happening? Look at your pictures. Here it's not. Look at your pictures.
Is it a big change then to understand how you do live commentary because what maybe. I don't maybe understand how the listeners and viewers know how it works, but you almost like the TV presenters have their earpiece. You still have a director talking to you. There's still the talkback system. It's not just sitting at a desk with a microphone.
No.
With whoever's sat beside you.
No, Martin Turner made us work on open talkback, so we could hear the control room, which was mainly Turner ranting at us. And the genius of people like Susie.
Yes.
And Craig Doyle, who is a genius at this, is they've got World War III going on in their ears all the time, Right, camera three, where are you? Long shot, set up a long shot. Come, go to Susie, go with the guest, right, we're going to go next. No, cancel that. And that is going on 100% of the time in the ears of a presenter. And strange talent is to be able to, half the brain is listening to that, while the other half of the brain is saying, smile nicely and deliver your spiel.
Remember what you actually have to say.
Yeah. And that's weird. But I've also found in commentary, you have this sort of divided brain thing. I'm in the middle of a sentence and half brain's going, this is rubbish. You're going to make a fool of yourself. This is wrong. Don't say it. No, it's wrong. And it comes out you can't stop it. So, no, I can't. Oh, God. But you're doing it, but there's some inability to stop. It's very odd. It's an odd thing to do. You're sat usually in a shipping container with no windows, with Keith, Toby, or whoever it was sat there doing the same thing as you. And you don't see an audience. So it's an odd, dissociated experience. It's entirely weird. It's odd.
How long did it take you for that to become comfortable?
Good question. Not long, because I don't think. I think the point is I didn't really understand what was going on half the time. So you don't worry about it, because TV, the crew are concerned 95% with presentation, with Susie or Craig or whoever is doing, Rachel, whoever's
yes,
in front of the cameras. That's what they're there.
That's the audience connection, isn't it? That's the face-to-face connection.
That's the pretty bit. And then, okay, cue commentary, and they all go and have a cup of tea and a ciggy and whatever, and come back an hour later and say, right, wrap, and that's...
Highlights package.
Gav, do the highlights, it's...
When you talk about the commentary side of things, you say, as you mentioned then, when something comes out of your mouth and you can't stop it, what's the one that's given you the biggest feeling in the pit of your stomach when you've said it?
Oh, I think there was a Belgian Grand Prix, and I remember because Kevin Schwantz was leading it by about half an hour, I think, or something like that. And Keith just looked at me and put his mic down. It's like a lap and a half to go. And Kevin Schwantz is cruising, to an easy victory. He tucked the front to the next corner, and,
the curse of the commentator.
But that's, you will make mistakes on live television. There is no two ways about it. And Toby Moody was brilliant at recognising riders and corners. He always said that what he couldn't understand about me, I could dig up quotes from 10 years ago, and my memory was, Eddie Lawson said about this corner that, that sort of thing. So there was a nice balance of...
Absolutely.
And with Keith, of course, you had the ex-rider. And I remember sitting next to him while he was talking about the old Assen going along the Veenslang at the back of the pits. And you bend it over here onto the narrow part of the tyre, the revs go up. I was sitting there thinking, this is what, if I was sat at home on my settee, this is what I want to hear. This is brilliant. But you need to temper that with a bit of journalistic objectivity. You need a journalist in there to give context, the other side, whatever. Balance.
Balance is so important.
Yeah.
You can't have two commentators of the same, cut from the same cloth.
No, you need that balance of, or variety, whatever it is. People who competed in a sport, and, one, they don't know the bloody rules usually. Two, they don't know the history, apart from their bit. So you've got to have a bit of perspective.
Perspective is a great word. And I think it's not easy because it's a very shallow pool.
Yes.
That the commentary talent is pulled from.
Yes.
I think over the last 25 or 30 years, in terms of longevity, we've had 9, maybe 10 through the sport, and from a Sky and a Eurosport perspective.
Probably.
And you were part of 2 of the best double acts that we've had over the years.
And also, I managed to keep a job for a long time, which is not a very television thing to do.
No, not at all. No, it isn't. But when you have that situation, when you come in, when you start with you start with Keith, and then
Toby,
and then back to Keith again, because people had got used to it. So through the heyday of World Superbike,
yes,
the rapport that yourself and Keith developed,
yes,
you have sort of the north and the south of the country.
Yes, they're very true. Yeah,
and you have the ex-racer and the journo, but two ex-racers together doesn't work.
Usually it is not a good idea.
It's not the ideal way, but to have two commentators so diametrically opposed worked so brilliantly.
Yes. I always remember the old school would say, you don't contradict me on air. Me and Keith delighted in contradicting each other on air as often as possible. And it was one that Keith said at the end, well, good weekend for Valentino Rossi. I went, what?
Was it?
He was beaten by his teammate and and his championship lead shrunk by 5 points. How's that a good weekend?
I think for want of a better word, and I can't think of a better word at the moment, it's often used. It's not the best one, but it was banter.
Yeah, I don't like the word either.
No,
but we'll settle for that.
And it's camaraderie.
It's. I mean,
I'm not a wordsmith. I can't think of the word that it was.
I know banter's an easy one, but that always covers a multis. A lot of
Yes. But I'm glad you understand what I'm trying to say.
I know what you're saying, but it was. I like to think that we were on the subject, though.
Oh, no question. It was how you described it. It was how you were, the chemistry between both of you.
We could have an argument and we're fine 10 minutes later, You
were almost doing it, and in a way that we try and do it with the podcast. It was so informal.
Yeah.
That's the word.
I think informal
was a beautiful way of doing it.
Yeah.
That got the story across.
There used to be a sign in the editorial offices of Cycle, the great American, back to the glory days of magazines.
Yes.
If you ain't telling it like you're telling it to the boys down the Lightning Bar, you ain't telling it. And I think there's, you're talking, you have a committed audience, so you can assume a certain level of knowledge.
Indeed.
If you've paid out to get...
And a certain level of familiarisation as well.
Yes.
Them to you.
Yeah. Then you don't have to explain, that the gear shifts on the left-hand side, usually. You keep having to remind executive producers, look, there are 1 million licence holders for two-wheelers in the UK. They know.
Never underestimate the information that your audience holds.
The most, on Eurosport back in the day, me and Jürgen Fuchs used to do, on a Friday, was it a Saturday? I can't remember, a little technical package. We'd pick a technical subject and we'd have a cameraman for 10 minutes and we'd do a rabbit about like the suspension, forget the spring, doing, piston oil hole shim, damping. And they went down a storm with people who, with really well-qualified engineers and my granny. This is the inside of a gearbox. 6-speed gearbox, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pairs. Look at that.
Cool.
Only one pair's engaged at a time. How do they do that? Well, look, slide, click, dog, And it was fantastic. You got this radiators. If we unfolded this aluminium sheet in here, you'd cover 3 of these pit garages. That's the surface area that's giving heat back to the atmosphere. Blah, blah, blah. You can, again, it's the simple, you do it simply, Chains.
Keeping it relatable.
Yeah, chains were great. I got conned into, I think Marco Simoncelli's 125 and, we're talking about, look how many parts there are. Think of the precision engineering in 58 links of the 158 links of that. And sprockets have to be, the way to look at this thing is to reduce it ab absurdum. So have a sprocket with 2 teeth. What's going to happen? The chain's going to flap like a mad thing, isn't it? So there is a minimum number of teeth you can comfortably have on a sprocket. That will alter how you can just have fun with stuff like that. And it all went down a storm. But could I persuade anybody to do it again?
But did you not find that in trying to do that now with the level that MotoGP is working at and what you can and can't see, it was again, as we spoke earlier on, the timing was perfect.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Laverty does an utterly astounding job.
Incredible.
On telling you what's going on. I was more interested in back to basics, the ABC of how things work, because if you're my age, to keep your first car and your first motorbike going, you had to know one end of a spanner from the other. That stopped being the case in about, when was the Ninja launched and the FZ,
That's mid-90s, isn't it?
No, it's earlier.
Is it earlier?
It's 80s.
Oh, the
GPZ 900.
GPZ 900R.
Yeah.
So that was 88,
So the first one,
wasn't it?
when bikes went water-cooled.
Yes.
So we're talking early 80s.
Yes.
Well, you didn't,
It's the first bike I ever went on the back of.
Was it?
GPZ 900R.
I was on the launch. Broke my hand. The impressed Wayne Rainey, who was a Kawasaki rider, because I broke my hand on a three-wheel ATC up in a field, the only...
not even on the GPZ?
No. So I'm mincing around Laguna Seca, pit lane next day with a theatrical splint, and, Rainey goes, hey, which corner? I was, actually, Wayne, up in the field on an ATC. He went, my greatest career moment, this, and Rainey said to me, hey, those things bite you in the ass. That was the highlight of my career as a motorcycle journalist, without question.
No better man to have that conversation, other than Kenny, maybe.
Maybe, Kenny would have said something much ruder than Wayne.
When you're doing these pieces to camera and you're commentating and from the MotoGP or Grand Prix 500s perspective, one thing that our listeners and viewers know that I'm very, very aware of and ask it an awful lot of our guests is the awareness of what you were doing at the time. Of being in the moment of, blimey, this is cool. And this is what I'm doing. And there's so-and-so and Jerry Burgess as moving through.
I don't know. It was where you worked. I think that is a danger. You were there to... try not to be a fan too much. You are. I mean, but you don't act like one.
No, of course not.
That's... it's a good question. I mean, these are the sort of things you realise more with hindsight. At the time, it was the norm. And the objective was to get it right. And I think myself and Keith, I think we would still agree that Malaysia 15, the great Rossi Marquez Fandango, we called it right live. We got it right. And that, if you're asking me for a moment when we walking out the commentary box almost in shock.
Tell us a story, Jules.
This is was going to be Rossi's 10th World Championship, and we had done Australia the week before, and Rossi was he third? I can't remember.
He was on the podium, wasn't he?
He was on the
podium. He was second or third.
And there was no recriminations or anything going on. Was that Simoncelli's podium as well? I think it might, yeah. And, they mugged Rossi, I think, on the last lap or something. Yeah.
Yes.
And then we Thursday afternoon, press conference at Malaysia, and I'm sat next to a very experienced and good French journo called Michel Turcot, from one of the weeklies. And Valentino starts off saying, well, Marquez did me over. He plotted with Jorge. And me and Michelle looked at each other and sort of giggled, thinking this is a Rossi joke. And then about, 15 seconds later, my God, he's serious. And there was another look. What? And, and then you really are reverting to journo mode. I've got to get this down, got to do it right. And because Marquez didn't do anything apart from the fact he gave his tyres a rest for a lap, appeared to be.
Yes.
And no one said anything. in the week after Australia before. Nobody, even the Italian press, who would normally have gone for Marquez's throat if they had even a vague idea there was. Not a thing. And then in the race, Valentino basically just trying to ram Marquez off the track, basically. Okay, Marquez had a go at Marquez.
I mean, it was 6 and 2/3 for a lot of it.
Well,
but
I think
coming to the actual incident,
what happened in the early bits was Marquez. Oh, you think I was messing you about in Australia? I'll show you what bloody messing about is, mate. And that meant Marquez was pulling moves that you would have expected to see on the last lap, perhaps, and he was doing it on the third and fourth laps. That's motorcycle racer being aggressive. I'm shocked, And Valentino got ticked off and just lost his head. And that's where he lost his 10th World Championship. There is no question. And Valentino still cannot face this as a reality. And neither can a lot of people. But it was, I mean, the overhead shot about, did he kick him? No, he didn't. There was two bikes coming together, you don't want to tangle handlebars and blah, blah, blah. And we got it right. Me and Keith called it right. And that was a source of some satisfaction.
Which then set up Valencia, and it was...
And then you got the conspiracy theories, flying about, Marquez didn't attack. Have you seen how many overtakes there haven't been in Valencia races?
It's, for me, the worst place to have a final round.
No, completely. I mean, Jorge was doing... from pole, I think, wasn't it? Out front, doing Jorge things.
Doing what Jorge did best.
Ludicrously consistent lap record pace. And the rest are all,
Metronome. Lap after lap. Catch me if you can, but this is what I'm going to do. This is my pace, and I'm going to do
and
this.
I'm doing it. You can sort yourselves out. And one of the tragedies of Malaysia was it was a magnificent win by Dani Pedrosa, which everybody forgets.
Yes, that's who won the race.
Yeah.
It's a great pub quiz.
Yeah.
Who won the 2015 Sepang Grand Prix?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Nobody does. And it was Dani.
Yeah.
Jorge had the chance to do the right thing on the rostrum, and he didn't, because Jorge always had a history of choosing, given the choice of wearing the white hat or the black hat, he always chose the black hat. Didn't mean to, but he did.
That's what he... Yeah. With his post-race celebrations.
Oh, yeah.
It never went right, did it?
No. And Jorge was... I liked Jorge. He was a very interesting, remarkably talented. Unbelievably, again, that era of the aliens. But occasionally, I think, I wish your mates and your friends had told you that wasn't a good idea, Jorge,
But when you look back to those years, when you had Dani and Jorge and Valentino, Casey, Mark coming in later on.
Ben Spies for a little while.
Indeed, was a superb talent. One of my, I guess, a bugbear from a fan's point of view, because ultimately, yes, I do this on a regular basis, but ultimately I am a motorcycle racing fan who kind of got lucky to do what I do. But my biggest issue at the time was because the bulk of the fans wore yellow glasses, they missed how good Casey Stoner was. And Nicky Hayden and Jorge.
Yes.
And Dani.
There was a remarkable crop. There was the level that they were operating at the front of that field then was astonishing. I mean, Nicky Hayden's title is probably, the more we have perspective on that, Kenny Roberts said it was the greatest championship ever. It might be mildly biased, but you can, it's difficult to argue. I mean, with basically a rookie crew chief and a bike that nobody else was riding, Nicky Hayden beat Valentino Rossi.
Absolutely. But then you look at Estoril in 06.
Yeah. When Dani
and
Dani rammed him.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the issues one thing that when I was looking through interviews that you've done before and just getting a little bit of context, because it's just the right thing, just have a look and see what there is.
This is professionalism,
Thank you. And picking little bits out. One overriding thing that I thought was superb was you'd explained it, and it might have been with Keith or it might have been with Gav and Hodgie.
Yeah.
where you see the first thing you do when you walk into a race circuit, what's the story?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. It's, right, what we're going to be talking about. This is, we've got a lot of time to fill. And what you're doing is saying, what's the buzz in the paddock? What are they talking about? Is it, Casey to Ducati? Is it Valentino to Ducati? What is the buzz? If you are, it's the journalist attitude is right. I've got an empty page here. What am I going to, what the hell am I going to put on it?
And when you look at the relationships between Valentino and basically everybody.
Yeah.
that was always the story to find. It wasn't so much who was going where, because it was, apart from sort of Valentino to Ducati.
Yeah.
And Casey from the LCR to Ducati again.
Yes, yeah.
Finding those stories and building that network within the paddock. How much did you enjoy that kind of networking?
That's the old journo in me loved it, of course. That was being able to, I've really got an understanding of what's going on, or a mini scoop I can drop in, And it could be a very mini scoop, but it's always nice to, be the...
What was the best scoop that you dropped that made, whether it was Keith or whether it was Toby, that made them turn and go? Just not knock them off their pace, but one that made you could see their ears prick up and go, That's
a good question. There weren't many, because
I figured it might be because you kind of speak before you go on air. Yeah. I'll give you a bit of time to think about it.
Yeah, I can't. Nothing springs to mind, to be honest. It would have been probably something that somebody like Mike Trimby would have let you. And I know Gary Taylor, when he ran Suzuki,
yes,
when he wanted something out there, sometimes to urge the Japanese to action. Could you, you just say, you get a little whisper, thanks, Gary, and so there would be snippets. It's not banner headlines.
No. Just a little thing.
It's we're up to date. We know this is happening, Yes. Oh, Kawasaki, you've got a new swinging arm, blah, 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 blah. That's, it's banal stuff like that, but that's what you need to know. That's what they need to know. The trouble Kawasaki were having with traction, well, they think they've sorted it. They've got this new fabricated swinging arm. It looks like a bit of sheet metal. That's, it's the sort of thing that the nerd in me loves, not really sort of the scoops. I mean, you always think what it was like in the 60s. You walk into Monza and go, there's 6 exhaust pipes on that Honda, it wasn't it.
Why was there only 2 at scrutineering?
Yeah, there's 6 on it now, it's that sort of thing has gone, because it can't and doesn't happen anymore.
Not anymore. It's an unusual paddock to be part of now. Even I understand that side of it, what you can say, what you can't say. But having that connection with the technicians, with the staff, and just having that bigger picture, which helps you tell the story of the weekend.
I think, you soon know it's a waste of time talking to riders because they haven't got a clue. If you want to know, have a little bit of a thing, talk to the tyre guys, talk to the suspension guys. Because they generally have a very, very good view across the board of what's happening and who's doing it right and who's doing it wrong.
It's a technical side, and they know what the riders half the time don't know how they do what they do. They just do it to a degree.
To a degree. I mean, I'm going to give it, and Chaz Davis, who I think is one of the superb talker, excellent rider, very intelligent, but he had a moan about some suspension to me, and I repeated it on air. And Graham Irving from Olin's, the Ulster guy, grasped me warmly by the throat and asked me, have I heard the phrase committed setting? So you get, no, I wasn't going to argue with Chaz Davis.
No.
One of the most intelligent racers of the past, any time I've dealt with.
Yeah.
But, oops, the Olins weren't amused, to put it that way.
I would hazard to say that there weren't too many. There weren't too many incidences like that.
There's one or two, but you get it. You've got to occasionally push the
pushing the envelope.
Yeah. Well, who was? Boy, is it Max Biaggi came into the Valencia one year? Max Biaggi basically broke into the commentary box to have a go at us. I think we reported him as having said something about the bike, which was not entirely sympathetic to Max. Let's put it that way.
Okay,
he was never the most sympathetic character to deal with at the racetrack, unless you were talking about football. And he came in and he said, well, I said it because Lynn Jarvis told me to say it. In other words, it looked like another of those plants to try and push the Japanese management. But it's very interesting. I'm rabbiting away, and look over your shoulder. There's an angry Max Biaggi behind me.
Not the thing you expect to see when you turn around, I would hazard.
No. And Donington one year turned out Mark Knopfler was sat behind us, which he later presented the trophy. That was a surprise.
That's a nice, especially with the music side of things that you enjoy as well as the racing. Yeah, it's yes, local hero, but just not at Donington. You see what I did there? Showing age again. It's a good thing. When you from the World Superbike perspective. What are your best memories of the foggy years alongside Keith? When you sat at something, a memory triggers and makes you smile.
Brands Hatch, foggy with the number 1 plate on the Ducati. I mean, that was remarkable. I was standing at the catering truck, looking at early in the morning with Martin Turner, the producer, and he was looking around and he said, are we in any way responsible for this? Knowing exactly what, and the answer is, Martin, yes, you are. Definitely. And that's back to the hometown hero thing, If you want to increase a TV audience or audience at a track, have a local winner. Silverstone having all sorts of fits about the crowd this year, down, good, it's not, Le Mans was sold out months beforehand. Why would that be? Well, the name Quartararo, I think, might have something to do with that.
Yep. As a world champion, and the great white hope of France. And I know there's a whole podcast we could do about this, but it seems like it's going to be a long time until we get one, Jules.
Till we get one, yes. Yeah. Yes, it is. I mean, this is the British Talent Cup and other, Red Bull rookies, at least there's a path.
Yes.
But British, the difference is between, let's say, Spain and Italy.
Yes.
Well, certainly Spain. Where motorcycle racing is the second most popular sport in the country after football.
Again, after football, yeah.
Although basketball and stuff is, right up there as well. But the whole pyramid of the sport is designed to produce Grand Prix races.
Yeah.
The feature class in a Spanish Championship race meeting is Moto3. The Junior World Championship. Not Superbikes, nothing production. No. It is Moto3 that matters.
They even put that on last, don't they? Be like a Superbike race. The feature race.
It's the feature race.
The feature race of the day, on a Sunday especially.
Yeah. It's Moto3.
Yeah.
That's what you're there for. And you look at a Spanish Championship Moto3 grid, and it's all the sponsors and leathers and teams you're used to seeing in Grand Prix. There's no wonder that somebody graduates from there, goes to Grand Prix, and they're straight into the top half dozen.
Of course.
Because they've been racing at that level for the past 3 years.
They've been with Nieto and Aspar. They've been through that.
Yeah, they're already with the Aspar team or whatever. And whereas BSB, the most successful domestic championship in the world, and an absolutely brilliant championship.
No question.
But it's not designed, and the owners and organisers will no doubt say it ain't our job to produce Grand Prix races. Their job is to get bums on seats, produce good television, and pay the bills and the shareholders. It is not in their remit.
Entertainment business.
Yeah. They're not there to further the career of, let's say, Jake Dixon.
No.
They would rather Jake Dixon had stayed in British Championship.
Of course.
They
want to keep as much talent as they can.
Yeah.
Rory disappearing for a year, coming back.
Yeah.
Didn't work out. Disappointing. But he's come back.
No, I think Rory Skinner, it was disappointing because he was better than...
The whole situation
it was just
wrong.
Yeah.
But when you look at when we go back to the original question, was your Scott Ogdens, your Eddie O'Shea's, your Casey O'Gormans, they're not guaranteed to get there.
No.
Jake wasn't. 5 seasons before his first win, but it wasn't enough to propel him. Yeah. Sam did a good job.
Yes.
In the one season that he had on a really very difficult motorcycle.
Well, it was
and then
recruiting a novice and a developing motorbike is a recipe for...
It is.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Scott made a fist of it, but being 6'2" and 10 kilos, 15 kilos more heavy than everybody else. But still did
got on front row, got on podiums.
Absolutely.
There's Bradley Smith the same.
Bradley was another good rider. And Cal obviously speaks for himself in terms of dogged determination.
Cal being the only one who really came through British racing, of course.
Indeed.
Bradley, I don't think Bradley or Scott touched British tarmac.
No, they didn't.
On their way to Grand Prix.
No. Danny Kent either. But he never made it to the big class.
No, he came back to UK after Moto2. Those guys never touched British tarmac.
I think Cal was an anomaly, wasn't he? In that sense, the Monster sponsorship was in its infancy as a brand, but that was a huge springboard for him.
And Cal was
and took full advantage of what was available.
The boss at Monster regarded Cal as a protege,
absolutely,
and a friend, and Cal has benefited.
He's done that
quite rightly.
He's
done all right.
He's done all right for himself.
Yeah, he was. He was in the Virgin Yamaha Cup and stuff.
He was.
And,
finished second to Tommy Hill.
I think that's
like
right.
Yeah.
So he is the complete anomaly that came through the British system, in and out of Supersport and Superbikes like that, and into Grand Prix.
To go from British Superbike Championship, was it 2008, wasn't it, with HM Plant Honda, to World Supersport Champion 2009.
Yes.
World Superbike 2010. To then go into MotoGP.
Yeah, I know.
It's unheard of when you look back.
Completely. Well, the only bloke who's done something like it is Danilo Petrucci, isn't it?
Yes.
Superstock. And,
the European Superstock.
Yeah.
Yeah, moving his way up.
Yeah, those would be the two, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Who've come the...
And that's where I think we're going to struggle now, because you look at the British Championship, a third of the riders are of a certain age.
Indeed.
The other third are of a younger age, but their opportunities have been in Spain and it hasn't worked.
Yes.
So the options now are getting less. This is a bit of a tangent, I apologise. But when you look at World Superbike now, they're looking at MotoGP, Moto2.
Yes.
Not national champions.
No.
So where are we going?
Depends.
It's difficult.
I mean, I think maybe... I look at superbikes and I think, God, this is a lot of money. Vast amounts of money. And they're how much faster than Superstock? Negligible. I still think, and we're looking at Spain and Moto3 being... Moto2 having been around for long enough, I haven't got this thought fully formed, so let's not pretend I've got a plan. But the feature class to be basically Moto2, or a cross between Moto2 and Supersport.
Next gen Supersport.
Yeah, would be. And Supersport 600s, nobody's buying them, so the factories are stopping them. So we're going to have to get more creative.
Triumphs, Aprilia 660s.
Yeah. You see what Honda launched at EICMA yesterday?
No, I missed it.
Not launched a bike, but a concept they say is going to production.
Okay.
V3.
Yeah.
2 forward, 1 back, with an electric compressor. Looks like a hairdryer between the V.
Wow.
So it's a turbocharger without a belt. Electronic control. this will be used on large capacity motorcycles. So it's not just, they're not billing it as just a concept.
No,
they are saying this is
going to be used.
This is going to be used.
Interesting.
You know,
I'll see if I can find a picture of that, and I'll put that into the description.
So people
understand.
On my social media.
Thank you, Jules.
I retweeted Honda's.
I'll make sure I put that picture up. It'll be somewhere just about here.
Yeah. And you think, wow, you know, and you think, well, that's, you know, you've got to race that, haven't you? That's got to be, that somehow or other.
They don't have to be 1,000cc capacity motorcycle anymore.
It's too big, and a modern, you know, I can buy something off the showroom floor, and it's too bloody fast for most British tracks.
Absolutely.
As a stock motorcycle.
Yes. Well, you buy a V4R, a V4S Ducati.
Yeah.
That's just come out. Or even the R1s, there's an X10. It doesn't matter, the BM. The new BM at 35 grand.
Yes.
200 and silly brake horsepower.
Yeah, I know. It's gaga. On Cadwell Park, really?
Yeah, no,
you know.
Gramshaw's going to be taking power out of it.
Yeah. That's
for places like
Peter
that.
Clifford, who was WCM and Red Bull manager, saying years ago, well, the obvious thing to do is take a speed out of the gearbox.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fine.
That'd be interesting. You know.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah.
Bless him. Well, of course, Simon Crafar got his win, didn't he?
Yes.
With the WCM on the Dunlop tyres at Donington back in the day.
And Mackenzie, his last podium with the Valvoline sponsored one that was WCM.
Yes, sorry, Carl.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Donington 93.
I think, you know, if I don't know what, I've never ever talked to, I remember having one conversation with Stuart Higgs about Moto 2.
Yes.
And, you know, and needing a class in the middle on slicks.
Of course. You know, GP2 came in, didn't they?
Yeah.
They were sort of the old Honda Geotech engines.
That's right.
The older generation.
Yeah, so
Moto 2s.
Because there's, you know, the theory was there was going to be enough second-hand Moto 2 bikes around to build up. And it hasn't really, but there is something there, isn't there?
Yes, there is. There's a preset there for it.
Yeah, there's. I have not got a fully formed cunning plan.
No.
But there is something there, isn't there, to chase.
For the difficulty, when you look back to 2019, we'll come back onto plans shortly.
Yeah.
When you look back to 2019, Josh Watley, Brandon Pash doing MotoStar.
Yes.
Scott Ogden.
Yes.
Pash and Watley, they were on Works Moto 3 bikes.
Yes.
Josh Watley's was Maverick Vinales' old Platinum Bay Moto 3.
Yeah.
So they were on pucker kit, learning the bikes, how to set them up, and it took Josh into Moto 3.
Yep.
Brandon was too tall. Simple as that.
Yep. End of.
Bottom line. Whereas Scott was also in the standard class, he also had that chance. But now that they've had the restructuring and Michael's more hands-on at MLav Racing, it seems to have given Scott the kick in the pants,
doesn't it?
That he needed because he's not seemed to have progressed.
No, this year, there was a plateau, wasn't there?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So Eddie's now bringing the team on a bit, and now Scott.
That's always an incentive for your team. Got a fast team, mate. Yeah.
Indeed. Let's bring in another fast Englishman. Let's see, because Josh it never quite works out for him.
It just didn't quite happen, did it?
No, just didn't happen for whatever reason. It didn't quite happen. But it's a fascinating aside. I knew we'd end up getting distracted because it's interesting conversation, and I enjoy it. Thank you, Jules. So back to World Superbike. Your best times with Keith. Tell me about them.
Well, we used to do everything from the studio, apart from Donington Park and Brands Hatch. I'm from your host broadcaster. So I think the stuff on site at Brands Hatch has to be right up there. You know, however many 100,000 people, whatever. You can't,
125? Depending on what you read.
Depending on, do the sums. I don't think you can fit them in. But, you know, Foggy with the number one plate on, demolishing the field in front of a crowd that size. When, if you're my age, you haven't seen a British world champion since Barry Sheene.
No, absolutely.
You know, it was... that was...
And he was back in Blackburn by 6:30, I remember.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
helicoptered out and that's
absolutely.
I'm going home. Thanks, boy, all the best. Thanks for everything.
And why wouldn't you? You know?
Enjoy your tea.
And it was, that was undoubtedly, in anybody's language, that was a special.
And then the same for Toby with MotoGP. You tend to be more on site for those.
Yes, we were always on site.
Different dynamic.
Apart from when International Eurosport stopped and we were only British Eurosport.
Yeah.
In the hiatus, and there wasn't the budget to go everywhere. No. So we picked and chose a few. But, we were usually on site.
With the different dynamic between of being part of two great commentary pairings, how different was it with Toby versus Keith? Because they come across as two very different people.
They are different. They're very different. But it was still... I never sat there thinking, oh, wow, I wish one or the other, or, you know... I don't think I did much different, frankly. I did my thing, and they did their thing. And we tried not to...
Yes.
With both partners... You tried not to get in each other's way too much.
Sure. But then we also had with the MotoGP Spolders and Randy on occasion.
Yeah.
Which also had a different dynamic to it.
Well, I was very keen on getting Spalding in because of the technical.
Now, he did baffle me with science.
Oh, yeah.
And continues to do so.
Which is what with Neil, I remember we used to have a little chat, he'd go, I want to do, with Assen, I want to do cross-plane crankshafts, but I really need to show... Neil, we haven't got a camera. We've got 2 minutes, top end. Talk about something else. And he said, well, this place is quite thirsty on fuel. Fuel consumption. And I think that was the one where, who ran out of petrol? Was it Nicky or Colin? Was it Nicky?
It might have been Nicky.
And then Colin went head over heels.
Colin went, yes.
Yeah, and Nicky sort of coasted across the line with an empty tank. Something like that. But, and I remember thinking after that one, yes, got it. We explained before the race what could happen, and it happened. And that was
another nadir comment. Isn't nadir the right word? Of commentary.
Yes.
When it reaches that pinnacle.
Yeah. So that was, and because Neil really didn't understand what was going on.
Yes.
But you had to just, rehearse, say it like that. Don't deviate, stick to the plan, because he was really good. And still is really good.
No question. We see him occasionally at BSB.
Yes.
He turns up on a fair regular basis.
Yes.
A little chat whenever he turns up. A lovely, lovely chap.
Yeah, good man.
We spoke earlier about the rise of Carl Fogarty for World Superbikes, and you were then fortunate enough to follow the rise of Valentino.
It looks like I planned it, doesn't it?
Which you couldn't do?
No, of course I didn't.
Completely impossible to do.
Oh, well, you timed that well, Julian, leaving there when Carl finished, like I had a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the way that the business works meant that, well, hang on a minute, that's just how it is. Yes. And then latterly Mark coming in as well.
Yes.
The precocious talent that Mark, but following Valentino's story, that was almost a privilege of an era when you look back at his titles and how the stories behind it. I had
Carl Fogarty era in World Superbike, and I had the Valentino Rossi era in Grand Prix. I mean, really. This is something when you just turn and look over your shoulder, you think, my God, how lucky.
But the great thing was you covered the first win. You covered Phillip Island 2003.
Yes.
The switch to the Honda. Welcome. The titles.
For the Yamaha.
For the Yamaha, yes. The back-to-back. But your standout moments, what are they for the Valentino era?
I still think his best race was 03 at Phillip Island, the 15, the penalty.
Sure.
Working out what was going on, and then... actually,
and then
he said,
executing it.
Yeah. And as he said after the race, maybe I go 100% for the first time. It's, it was just, you sat there looking at the clock ticking down going, And on a track where it is possible, Phillip Island, still in my mind, without doubt, the greatest racetrack that motorbikes race on. And it might not have been possible on, quite a few other racetracks.
No, I would agree.
On Phillip Island, it was, and Valentino did it.
It's aligning again, as we say.
Absolutely. As with Marquez and Phillip Island not that long ago, when...
Yes. Which, most people, I think, will remember, but Valentino had overtaken under a yellow flag, hadn't he?
Yes, at the right-hand slow corner earlier in the lap.
To which then gave him a 10-second penalty at the end of the race. So therefore, screw you.
Yeah,
keep your 10 seconds.
So he had to work out what his pit bull. I'm winning, aren't I? And it's saying like fourth place minus 15. What?
So a very intelligent rider.
So just having the spare brain space to process that lot while you're riding around Phillip Island is pretty deeply impressive on its own. And then going, oh right.
When you see Valentino as a character, and you'll have seen this from all the press conferences that you've done, and I always had this thing. There was a point in Valentino's career, and I forget when it was, but I remember seeing him on the podium, and he shook hands with possibly Max, and there was absolutely nothing in his eyes.
Yes.
And that was the point where I'm like...
Because occasionally the mask slipped.
Yes. And that was the point where I suddenly thought, you are something different.
Yes.
You are, there's this happy-go-lucky, go into the toilet, the image that you portray isn't who you are.
There was a genius John Mockett cartoon, one of many, after the Saxon Room when Sete beat him on the last corner.
Yes.
And the first frame is like Valentino, and he's holding it's a joker's mask, it's a medieval jester's mask. And then the second frame, he's moved it to one side, and there's this sour-faced, really, nasty-looking piece of work.
I'll never forget seeing that.
Yeah.
Just caught a fleeting glimpse of it.
That's all you need. Just the mask just slipped just for a moment. His dad said when he was quite young, he said, Graziano said, when I was racing, if somebody crashed, my instinct is to stop and help.
Yeah.
He said, my son is not like this. Never was a true word spoken.
No. So what were your experiences of being with Valentino? You've interviewed him, you've been in his company, you've been in press conferences, commented on races.
What you see is what you get. He's genuinely, if you ever, he really didn't want to do much face-to-face.
No.
He'd done, hell, if too much of his time is taken up by idiots from the press anyway. But if you did get him, I think the last time I did that, I was start of the year. I want some time. You could have 15 minutes at Brno. That'll do.
Thank you very
so
much.
6 months later, I get to, and you got the full attention. You got absolute full attention. He did his best for you to answer your questions. So you can't fault the bloke on his professionalism. And he is genuinely funny.
Yes.
And he's genuinely Italian. It's a stupid thing to say, but he has that's the comedy thing that a Spaniard would never have. You can't imagine, say, Angel Nieto.
No.
Rushing into a loo. His dignity would not,
But also, this is how Jorge couldn't pull it off because he didn't have
because he's Spanish.
It'd be like Max trying to do it.
Yeah.
He's the opposite Italian version.
Max is a Roman.
Indeed. So he's not Italian, he's Roman.
He's Roman.
Big difference.
And he occasionally, like Max used to like to the Italian press, he'd occasionally slip into some proper Roman slang, which is a bit of a dialect, just to remind them, Whereas, of course, Valentino and mates are all seaside boys.
Yes.
Playing on the kart tracks. And Max came, wasn't a kid prodigy. He came comparatively late.
Absolutely, but with a super success on the 250s.
Well, just one of them. Have we seen a better 250 rider? I'm not sure we have.
No. And we never, I know we never will, but
we won't now.
A better middle-class rider.
Exactly.
When Grand Prix when you were a 250 world champion, it wasn't a stepping stone.
No.
I find that dynamics changed slightly.
It has, but there's this almost false narrative about, there was specialists on 125s and 50s. No, there weren't. There were works riders who got paid to stay on them. If you were trying to earn a living,
yes,
you needed to be on 500s. I offer as evidence my old mate Keith Huewen, who was, whisper this, was bloody good on 350s. Silverstone second place, first Grand Prix.
Yep.
But he couldn't make money. Even at Grand Prix, whatever. There wasn't, he had to go to 500. And if you look at, think of we're going back in history, but say Bruno Knoibühler, the Swiss privateer, who rode everything from 50s, 125s, 250s, 350s, 500s, everything. He was not, a 50 or 125 specialist, but occasionally somebody like Creedler would pay him to ride them. So the idea that people stuck in the class because they were...
But he was one of those that was renowned for being a smaller class rider, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah, because he was a little geezer.
Because he was a little dude, and that's what it was.
And there was money to be made.
And that's the ultimate reason for racing motorcycles at the end of the day, is to make money and avoid doing a proper job.
Exactly. So you've got to earn a living. And if all you were going to do, unless somebody was paying you and paying for the motorbike, and they were, if you were like Anton Mang or Jean-François Boldet on the factory 250, 350 Kawasaki's, why would you go anywhere else? You're covered in sponsorship, you've got factory bikes, you're going to win, and there's going to be a wage.
You got a wage plus your bonuses,
plus all the rest of it.
Thank you very much. We'll factor that.
Oh, well, I think I'll go bankrupt racing on the triple in 500s. No,
I don't think I will. I have a lovely wife. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got a great home. I've got lovely kids. I can win most weekends. Nice life.
Yeah,
thanks very much.
This idea of the specialist. But Angel Nieto would have liked to have ridden a 500, but how much money was he being paid by Derby or whoever or Girelli? To ride 50s and 125s? Answer, lots.
It's still a business at the end of the day.
Yes.
Motorcycle racing is a business.
Yeah.
And that's where the bottom line and how things, how the narrative changes quite a bit.
And I mean, this is, again, British Championship. If you're a Brit, you're looking at Superbike because that's where you can make money.
Yes.
And it certainly used to be the case that you had to do the T-Bug Steve Hislop, who wanted so much to be a 250 Grand Prix rider. And he'd start off doing well in the 250 Euros.
Yes.
Against the Van der Gerberg brothers and people like that. And then the TT had come around and he swapped, the brain had... And when he came back after the TT, it took him a while to readjust.
Always the way.
Because in those days, the top three in Euros got automatic Grand Prix entries.
Oh, of course.
So if you finish top three in Euro 250s, and that's, so you'd see Hizzy at the World Superbike round with the European 250s, kipping in Brian Morrison's truck or whatever and trying to get a top three.
Well, this is what we were talking to the likes of Nigel Bosworth about and Sorf and people like that, trying to make their way into Grand Prix racing. And we've spoken to Roger Burnett previously. We're with him again next week, actually. And when they explain how racing used to be.
Yes.
When you could turn up and you could pay an entry if you were quick enough. If you qualified, you raced.
Exactly.
And it was, you'd turn up in your Luton, Bedford or whatever you had.
Yes.
And the paddock wasn't. It was so far detached from as it is now. But then speaking to Hervé about this back at MotoGP, we were fortunate enough to have an hour with Hervé.
Which is always worthwhile.
Stunning. An incredible, incredible man. And he was explaining, because he's been in there since God was a lad. He's seen all the changes. But when you could go back to the late 70s, early 80s and almost run what you brung.
Yes. Yes.
And trying to make a living and trying to make your way and catch the eye of the factory teams.
Which is the only way you're going to make any money, of course.
Indeed. And, you're looking at your Rothmans Hondas and your Aggo Yamahas and things like that. And the Marlboro Yamahas. So far removed from today.
Yeah. I mean, the great change was Trimby and Erta, of course, when they contracted teams for the season.
Yes.
That was the great sea change. And because people could actually do budgets and things like that, plan.
Who knew? Logistics.
Who knew that was a good idea, rather than, as you say, turning up and arguing with the organisers about getting a start at Aston or something.
And how much start money and things like that used to be. I have a sheet in my drawer, and it was given to me by a good friend of ours called Tim Barker, and it's an old John Player it's a John Player International at Cadwell Park.
At Cadwell.
And it listed start money.
All right. I think I've seen it. Yeah.
Incredible. Barry Sheen, £4,000.
Yes.
Check contract, if enough.
Yes.
Kenny Roberts, £10,000 because it was $20,000 to race.
Yeah.
Roger Marshall, $450.
Yeah.
Things like that. Incredible.
And no doubt glad for the 450, Reg.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely at the time.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of time for that man. And for Roger. And
yes.
Just absolutely incredible. But again, we digress. The changes that have come through in MotoGP in the short time that you've been out of the paddock, aero, ride height devices, apart from the first three or four laps of Sepang this weekend just gone, incredible,
utterly remarkable,
absolutely stunning. But then it reverted back to type.
Yes.
How do you feel about MotoGP these days and where it's at?
Well, the great thing is this year that we have what everybody actually wants, whether they know it or not. It's a confrontation between the two best riders by far this year are going head-to-head for the title.
Yes.
That's what we want to see. So that's the good thing. Ride-height devices... I agree. It's something Tiff Needell put on Twitter last week, I think, or after the big crash at Phillip Island, was the only way you can alter regulations instantly rather than with 2 years' notice is on safety grounds. They're clearly not safe. Ban them. And I thought, the man talks sense. This is exactly what should be done. Because I don't see it's going to... I have to ask by Laverty or others, but yeah... They work, whether they're, if they're not engaged, the motorbike still works. So just bloody cut the control cable or whatever, unplug it, get on with it.
What about the aero side of things?
Once that genie is out of the box, I don't know how you put it back in again. Because you can't, you've got to shove it through a window of a certain size.
Indeed.
Well, they tried that. And you end up with sort of Stegosaurus and... God knows what. I don't know how you legislate effectively to...
I find it very difficult now that when we spoke with Frankie Carchedi before the start of the season, he'd just come back from the Sepang test. So he just had his second session with Mark. And he was explaining then about front tyre pressures and how it was quite it's quite an impressive point that he made, because he just finished working with Digi, and he said in MotoGP, unless you are on the second row, you cannot win a MotoGP.
Yeah.
Well, who booked the trend of that this year? So that came. It's like the famous last words.
Indeed.
Almost. But with having to now manage a race. Rather than, we've always had to manage races with tyres ad infinitum.
Forever, yeah.
But it wasn't quite as obvious. Everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
So you kept
there
together.
were certain tracks like Barcelona in the scorching heat where Dovizioso would roll around probably about a second and a half slower than he could do until the last 3 or 4 laps and then blammo. But that wasn't every round. That was just an extreme example. Who said this? Was it Roman Facada, who usually talks sense?
Indeed.
Big time. It doesn't usually, he always talks sense. That, Michelin have got data. Michelin have got loads of data. They should be able to mandate a front tyre pressure range and stop all this post. There's nothing worse in racing than not, Digi's finished 4th, but he might have a tyre pressure problem, so he might be 6th. That is the way to get people to turn off their televisions.
Indeed.
If they can't believe what they're seeing. And I think for Carter, and if if Forcada says this is possible, then I'm putting my hand up for it as well. Michelin can say, at this track, you must run 1.6, 1.8 bar at the start.
Yes.
Right? Get on with it.
And off you go.
Yeah. And we can dispense with this layer of monitoring.
VAR on motorcycles.
Indeed.
There's a big change coming as well in MotoGP, isn't there? Freddie Spencer as chief steward. He's retiring. And then Simon Crafar coming in.
Interesting appointment.
You know Simon
tolerably well. Yes.
Beautifully put. Tolerably well. I'm going to use that. I'm going to write that one down.
Tolerably. Yeah.
Tolerably well.
Should we use more that word?
I agree completely. What's your thoughts on that, Joel?
I think it's a good appointment. I mean, Simon is a very level-headed, thoughtful bloke. As you would say, is Freddie, but his tenure has not. Let's be fair. I am a massive, he was one of the greatest riders I've ever seen, one of the two fastest riders I've ever seen, along with Casey's the other one. But, it has not worked. There have been episodes of, was it Jerez last year before, when Quartararo and who else got penalties for nothing, for absolutely nothing, during practice and qualifying, I think. And Miller put through a bit of weight around on race day. Nothing bad.
No.
But he got a bit aggressive. By the standards that were applied on the Saturday, Miller should have been shot at dawn on, no penalties. And you think it's that inconsistency.
That's the word, isn't it?
Yeah. That is, I don't care what you do, just apply the rules.
Yep.
If you think the rule says no contact, then right, there's no contact. And if you initiate contact, penalty.
Indeed.
And I did a column about the same time as that Jerez thing, and I said that in any sport that involves physical contact, danger or whatever, it's the contestants who actually set the limits.
Oh, yeah.
Think of the front row of a rugby scrum. You can't police that.
No.
There's only 6 people who know what's going on. The two front rows.
The two front rows, yeah.
And if a line is overstepped, then remedial action tends to be taken, one way or the other.
Yes. So when you talk to the riders, and usually the giver is less bothered than the receiver.
Correct.
But you're not telling me that it hasn't happened both ways each time, and so the receiver is always the more aggrieved.
Well, again, back to my old mate Keith. Years and years ago at Cadwell Park, he found himself. I can't remember who the person in question was, but he stuck Keith into the. And there's no runoff, is there? In the afternoon race, the giver found himself spearing into the straw bales. Back in the paddock, that was a bit harsh, Keith. And the facts of life were explained,
Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
What's good for the goose?
Yeah. And by and large, my thesis is that the Motor Grand Prix boys, the big boys, the world-class boys, they can sort it out. They don't overstep. You don't need, unless there's something totally egregious, that, you can basically leave them alone.
Yes.
When I see Supersport 300 at Barcelona and touring and crashing on the slow down lap and yellow flags, the phrase is, and the same would go for Moto 3, get medieval on their asses, put it in the van, go home.
Yep. I am the Supersport 300 class, whether it was at British level or at world level, it was so difficult to watch.
It's so scary.
The lack of consideration for one another's safety.
Yeah, and your own.
And your own.
Yeah. What's happen when you put kids on bikes like that on big tracks?
That are so evenly matched.
Yeah, that everybody...
Without racecraft.
Yeah. And again, I think if you go back to when they would have been riding 125 two-strokes, this is not I know that's not going to happen. But I think Steve Sawford and others have said it repeatedly. You had to think and learn and apply not just in riding, but in setup and everything.
Yes.
And they were much more spread out because some kids learnt to get it right quicker than others.
They all learn at different paces.
Yeah, and some never learnt. But the super sport thing under some of the behaviour, I would really, race direction. I mean, if they so much as look like they're going to do something daft, haul them off and put it in the van.
Because Moto3 have never really learned, have they, in qualifying?
No.
Because the punishment has never been severe enough.
Yeah.
You cross this line, you're barred.
Yeah.
Okay. You cross this line, you're barred.
Yet Colin Vieira, the far too big Dutch lad, goes out on his own and gets on the first or second row every time. And yet, and Neil Hodgson had a rant about, I think, was it one of the British riders, was it Ogden? A few Grand Prix ago, who, again, left it, why, when this tactic has failed repeatedly by leaving it, do you keep repeating this tactic?
Definition of insanity.
Yeah. Just go and get a banker in on your own that's at least going to put you halfway up the grid.
Didn't he miss out? Was it Silverstone?
Yeah, I think it was.
It was Silverstone, wasn't it? He didn't have enough. Because bearing in mind it's a 3/4 of an hour lap.
Yes, exactly.
On a Moto3.
Bar, yeah. And it's, and you think, for God's sake.
Yes.
But there is, the Rick's direction question is, you've got to keep kids, just get medieval on their asses, basically.
Tight leash. When you look at commentary, forgive me for going down this road, but it is part of commentary.
Yes.
You have the great bits, as we always have. Everybody focused on the great bits.
Yep.
But such is the nature of the sport that we're involved in, we have difficult times.
Yes.
And the most difficult of times. How do you deal with that both during and post?
The during question is, I hope, professionally. Which is, don't run off at the mouth. You may have a very good idea what's happened, but no one's interested in your idea. It is not necessary for you to blurt an opinion on what's just happened. I think of, I'm
trying not to pinpoint.
No, I'm trying not to either.
To pinpoint one particular incident.
Neither
as
am
such.
I.
It's the general.
Yeah, that is, you see what's happened. You know that something very serious has taken place. So you do the old, well, that's what you say. We red flag. Oh, we've had a serious accident. Emergent, the doctors are with the riders, and we will bring you any news as soon as we get it. I don't mind a commentator saying, and I'm not going to speculate on. That
is the time to wait for official news.
Yeah, you wait. You do not blather off at the mouth. And you also got to.
I was going to ask about that. You've got the director as well.
You've got the director who will probably be saying to you, right, we're going to go to an ad break. Give us 3 minutes to work out what the hell's going on here. So throw to, all right, and what we'll do is we'll have, I think we'll have a look at some highlights for last week, shall we, from the Moto2 race at Aragon.
Yes, and that trying to pick the tone of voice is also incredibly important.
Very. I mean, you don't want to trivialise it, and you don't want to bury the poor guy either. I mean, we've all seen accidents where you think, oh my God, and 30 seconds later he's walking to the ambulance, which is the most blessed feeling of relief. And we've all seen the opposite as well, which
sadly
is true. So this is one area where you have to be utterly professional. And that means saying the minimum, listening, and taking no chances whatsoever.
Because you only get the same time to react as we do sat at home on the settee watching the same
we're watching the same
footage.
Pictures, yeah. And there, I can think of a couple that I've had the misfortune to be involved with. And it's just, you're aware, all of a sudden you're well aware that I have got an audience out there who desperately wants to know what's happening. I would love to know what's happening, but I can't. So, right, this is the time you bring the curtain down as calmly as you can.
It's not something you can practice either, is it? It's
not really. You can have discussed it. There might be plans. If we ever get then this is how we'll treat it. But it's and you're usually grateful when the directors in your ears say, "Right, photo ad break." Yeah.
Then you have 2 minutes to formulate the plan of what you can come back with.
Then you can actually, and you might know whether. Well, we understand the race. The pit lane will reopen, and Joe Soap has been taken to the medical centre. We'll bring you any more news when we have it. Pit lane will reopen in 5 minutes. Yeah, that's it. No more.
Thank you, Jules. I think it's an important side cover. It doesn't happen very often, thankfully.
Thankfully, anymore.
But it's going back to the 60s and 70s, then it was far more prevalent. So safety is
yes, they're just
absolutely completely different to where it was then. I think it's a good time now. I picked this up because it was a bit too high on my collar.
Oh right,
well, that's the reason why I'm holding it. Yours is in the perfect place.
Good.
Let's have a look at our patrons. You have a check to make sure everything's okay on yours. Let's have a look. Where are we at? I did speak to Keith briefly yesterday, asking for any stories that I could throw you under the bus with. But he was really polite and didn't.
Didn't he?
No.
That's
the only things that he actually picked up on that he said you would maybe want to
rant about.
No. He was really good. Honestly, he was so good about it that he was quite vehement that you liked a tidy comms booth.
That's news to me.
Unless he was being, unless he was being kind of facetious and
I think that's probably meant about Neil Hodgson being an ex-works rider. So you'd sit down and there'd be coffee cups and bits of paper and God's sake, somebody being in ears used to be waited on.
As they do. In fact, well, in that case, what I'll do, and I'll put this up onto the screen. Apologies to the audio listeners because they can't see it. Where is it? Where's Keith? There we are. He sent me the picture.
That's me.
So explain that picture.
That is Hodgson's debris. And I'm about to sit down there to try and commentate. And Hodgson's left it like a pigsty.
I'm hopeful that they're actually scrumpled up bits of paper and not used tissues.
No, they are scrumpled up timing sheets.
Timing sheets. So you look thoroughly annoyed.
Probably also jet lagged in that photo, which would help my temper a lot.
Indeed. And also, one of my final questions to every guest is, what's your best hire car story? And Keith was quite adamant that you weren't a big fan of his driving.
He's correct.
We'll come to that before the end. I'll let you have a think on that one before we wrap up. 3 questions from our patrons.
You're right.
Thank you very much to our patrons. The link's in the description below, whether you're on audio, whether you're on the YouTube, in the description below. You can join the Patron scheme if you so wish. First up, Phil Mayhew. Son of Chris Mayhew, a name you would be most aware of. How do you feel that World Superbike today compares with the 90s era of Foggy, Russell, Keeley and Edwards in terms of the quality of racing and the personalities? Was that the golden era, or are we just being nostalgic? Thank you, Phil.
Phil, thank you. I'm always wary of the rose-tinted spectacles. It is a bad habit to go, when I was a lad, it was, no, you were a lad and you were enjoying it. That's all that means. It doesn't mean it was better. It meant you were having a good time. So I'm very, very wary of those. However, there was that era when, there was cubic money in World Supers. Riders were paid a lot. Factory teams from everybody. And you've got to say that was a major major up in World Superbike.
Because it's gone through its roller coaster years, hasn't it? That was the peak of its career.
The peak of its commerciality as well, and audiences. But you've got Top Rack now. The most extraordinary rider. I would have bet the house against him being world champion on a BMW. Absolutely. I would have conceded, I'll probably win a race or two, because it's Top Rack.
It's Top Rack, yeah.
But a championship, you must be joking.
Against Bautista and the mercurial talent of Nicolo Bulega.
Yeah, well, we knew Nico was good. He was, he's one of those that, he was in VR Academy, wasn't he? But was sat out of the goal left, and so
had family problems, didn't he?
There was
off-bike problems.
There was something that and you think, well, that's usually if you're Italian, that's your lot. You are. But he was he an Acciaio Moto3 rider? I can't remember. And he was, anyway.
He went through VR46 Academy, didn't he?
He was VR46. So, he had the path laid out. And he was one of the few, really, who fell off the wagon. You'd have thought, being spat out by that is, not going to be good for you, is it?
No.
But he was always a talent.
Yes. So
the fact he managed to find the mental strength to reinvent himself in superbikes, I think, is admirable.
I agree.
And I enjoy watching him race a motorbike. He's
super talent.
And it's, World Superbike always has been old gits versus up-and-coming kids. And I think you can call Alvaro an old git and Nicolo, I know he's had a career already, but, we probably first saw Nicolo when he was about 15 in Moto3. Right.
Yeah. Incredible talent.
So I don't like the rose tinted, but there was an era that was special.
Without a doubt. Thank you, Phil. Maggie Day. What does Jules think about all the upgrades in MotoGP, as there have been many? And also, are you enjoying retirement?
I don't like the word retirement, Maggie. I struggle with it. But
are you enjoying pursuing different different
Maggie,
avenues?
I'm having a great time. I'm more than happy. If I wasn't going to be happy, I wouldn't have stopped. Basically, it's the upgrades in MotoGP.
Yes,
too many. Clue about?
I suspect is what we discussed earlier with the ride heights and the air race.
This is I
don't check the questions before I sit down, so sometimes we cover off.
I would. It's Moto Grand Prix. It's the pinnacle. It's meant to push technology. But I struggle when there are things going on that are not applicable to street bikes. So, electronics, traction control, absolutely.
Yes. Safety.
Get it on, develop it so we can have it on the road. Disc brakes, radial tyres, all the rest of it over the years. Ride height device, clearly not applicable to street bikes.
No. It's like the F1 thing, is it? There has to be a trickle down to the man in the street.
There has to be a trickle down. Otherwise, why would motorcycle companies spend money on it?
Absolutely.
It's an expensive R&D lab.
It's millions and millions of pounds worth.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Jules. Last one. We have a handful of questions from our great friend Craig Lowe. Who from bike racing would Jules want to be stuck in a lift with for 5 hours? And who wouldn't you want to be stuck with?
Probably nobody. Good question. One of those difficult ones to give a sane answer to, really. But there are people whose, over the years, every word, when you went to a press debrief, Valentino, obviously, Casey, not many words, but all of them worth listening to. Nicky Hayden, obviously the nicest bloke you could hope to meet. But again, there was always a bit of steel there as well. The mask did slip from time to time. I mean, Hervé Poncharal is probably the best answer. If you want an interesting conversation.
Incredible man.
Hervé Poncharal would probably be as good a choice as any. The 5 hours would go quite quickly, I think.
I think they would. And we were fortunate enough to have that hour with him. and we'd never met previously. And while Phil, we mentioned Phil, Chris Mayhew worked with Dominique Saron and and Hervé. So my opening gambit to Hervé was, before we even started rolling, can I show you these pictures? And he was like, wow, 1988, Dominique. And I was well, okay, this is where that's come from.
Yes.
These are the people that I know. Let's chat.
He would have been a happy man.
Over the moon with it. And it was one of my many highlights of this year. What one thing above all else do you pride yourself on?
I hope the answer is professionalism. I react very badly to accusations of bias or whatever, very badly, because we try, when we were Eurosport, we were broadcasting pan-European, obviously. So you had to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make a point of not. When you're a British-only channel, you're allowed, I think, a bit if you want the homeboys to do.
Jingoism?
But no, stopping short of jingoism.
Just short, yeah.
But by and large, I think I'd like to think that it's the journalistic integrity thing that, if I'm going to get on the high horse, that I hope was maintained.
But I think also the journalist side of things is also having corroboration for stories and making sure that what you're saying is as accurate as you know it can be.
Absolutely. And it's the old
two independent sources.
Two independent sources before you say it. I mean, I remember Toby got a really good lead. I think where we were at Valencia, end of the season race, and he came and he said, look, I've only got this from one person, but it's Loris Capirossi's manager, and he's signing for Kawasaki. And I thought, well, if you want to say it, Toby, I'm not going to argue with you. That's, it's only one source, but it's a cracker. And 5 hours later, he signed for Suzuki. Now, when Toby got the Kawasaki story, I've no doubt it was true. Well, it was Pernat, so I'm not that sure. But, it was, he might have been exerting a bit of leverage. But, it probably, you get this. The truth, what is true now, is a complete pork pie 3 hours later. It's what Stephen Fry referred to as the half-life of facts.
Oh, beautifully put.
Yeah, Stephen Fry would be, wouldn't
Yes, eloquently put.
Yeah.
I remember, you may remember this as well, Matt Burt, when he was at MCN, went with that big spread that Cal Crutchlow was signing. It was on a Wednesday, it was headline news, and I forget that it might have been signing for HRC maybe, but actually he went to Ducati. It was completely wrong. He'd been sold a huge,
unusual, because Matt Burt was track record.
Absolutely.
Is really impeccable. Very, very, very good.
But because it was that one incident,
yes,
you tend to remember it. And I think he took it on the chin, was like, that's racing.
Yeah.
But he'd been, I think he just got it on that one, and I think it was from Cal. That was the weirdest thing.
Well, never listen to bloody riders about anything is the answer to that.
They have no idea what's going on.
They have no idea what's going on.
As you Carlo Panacci, Roger Burnett, like that. They
the
know.
tyre people, the suspension people,
the suspension
people,
hospitality.
Far better information.
And then the final one from Craig. What piece of commentary or race report means the most to you?
Means the most is interesting. Well, Nicky Hayden's World Championship is obviously right up there. Seeing a British Grand Prix winner, which would have been Joe Williams at Assen. And then in top class, Cal getting on the podium in Brno, wasn't it? Before the first win.
That's right.
Danny Kent being a world champion. This is, I've waited, I'm getting on. I've waited a long time for a British Motor Grand Prix world champion in any class.
It doesn't matter what class. We have a world champion.
It's a world champion,
And I think Danny's story is fascinating. It's peaks and troughs, personal struggles.
Yes, all sorts.
To now become a British superbike race winner.
And in those conditions, it was, I think I went on record as saying, watch Kent in this final race.
That's why he can do what he can do.
Yeah.
You don't lose it.
No, you don't. And the first half of his World Championship season, he was utterly remarkable. But then when KTM got the new chassis in, the upgrade,
the tide turned on Oliveira.
And Oliveira, who is a machine, and certainly was then, started applying the screws. We all started panicking.
It was close in the end, wasn't it?
Far too close.
Far too close to call in the end, but it's the great thing that we can, and we will always. 2015 Moto3, and always introducing us that on the show because he's respectful. It's how it should be because he is
a world champion.
The same with Hodgie or whoever. It doesn't matter. A world champion that they're not giving out in Christmas crackers.
Precisely. Anybody who wins a championship, as Kenny Roberts and other people have pointed out, is not an accident.
No. Dan Linfoot a few weeks ago. There's a story of redemption.
Yeah.
We had Dan on, and how much I enjoy the endurance side of things, and that was super.
One of the pleasures of this year was watching Dan Linfoot in endurance.
It's been a great thing, and if you've not seen that one, have a look back through the back catalogue. Final question. I alluded to it earlier on, giving you a little bit of time to think about it. Your best hire car story, Jules?
There aren't many, because I'm a boringly law-abiding driver. I remember Toby driving us back from Velcom. We weren't enjoying South Africa, let's be honest about it. Certainly not up in where we were. And we did not want to miss the plane. And Toby is a very decent driver. He competes at Chelsea Walsh.
Hill climber.
Absolutely. He's more than competent.
Yes.
And he turned to me and said, "Permission to drive like a bleep." Yeah, get going. Bloody hell. That was, I remember one sort of set of downhill S's, that was just a trifle worried. Keith liked me for this, but his best one, but Keith never tried to scare me. He wasn't trying, but he did scare me. He forgot about a roundabout on the way to Aragon from the hotel. He'd just overtaken he gleefully overtook a car full of HRC mechanics. There was giggling at me or something. Round the bend, uphill, and she's on windy little back roads, and there's a roundabout that I think we more or less went straight across. I think I called him the word that Toby.
Yes, I could well imagine.
Yeah.
This has been absolutely fascinating, Jules. Thank you so much for your time. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Maybe we get a chance to do this again sometime.
Whatever. It's always fun.
We know where you are. It's always fun to do.
I can talk.
I think it's nice just for the first one to scratch the surface. We've done a couple of hours, and I appreciate you giving up your time with what you do.
It's absolutely fine, Dave. I mean, there's some subjects that we've skipped over, and no doubt some other old blarney that we could.
It's difficult to cover everything in one sitting. Same with Mike Edwards last week.
Spike, you couldn't cover what he's done in
not a 3 chance. So we're going to go back and do a couple with those.
Yeah.
So maybe after Christmas, February time, we'll come down and do this again.
Sure. Whatever day.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Julian Ryder.
Thank you, Dave. A pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, folks.
A massive thank you to Jules for his time. What a fascinating chat and what a great fella. We look forward to doing a part 2, hopefully in the not too distant future, probably early in the new year. We've got plenty more to come over the next few weeks. We sat down with Roger Burnett last week and with Frank and Jordan Bird. And we were at Motorcycle Live Amplified over the weekend. So we'll bring you all the joy and all the excitement from the NEC. Until then, as we said at the beginning, please, if you get a chance, like and subscribe. We'll be doing our best to bring you the best guests possible. And we'll catch up with you next week. Thank you so very much for watching and look after yourself. Bye-bye.